Welcome back to this overview of Oh the Stories We Tell. I'm the founder of Oh the Stories We Tell, Chris Templeton, and I want to thank you for coming and taking the time to find out more about this model and hopefully see if it's a fit for you. If it's not, I understand. If it is, I think you'll find tremendous value in it, and that is as much as I want to say about that right now. Please feel free to leave comments, questions, concerns. This is very much geared toward being a back and forth. I can't answer every question that comes in. Well, at this point I can, but as things develop, I expect that we'll develop a bigger audience, and I do hope you'll share this with other people. Enough of that. So, in the last episode, we talked about the three questions. What's the story I'm telling myself? Is it serving me in this moment? And if it's not, is there a more authentic story that I can tell? So in this episode, we're going to talk about the line, what I call the line. And it's based on the second question, which is this story that I'm telling myself in this moment, is it serving me? And so it's really a binary question, isn't it? It either is serving me or it's not. I can make it on a scale, and we'll talk about how to do that later. But the bottom line is, if you think about it being a yes or no question, then we can draw a line. So what I've come up with is the idea of a horizontal line. And that line is, if the story that I'm telling myself about what I'm thinking, about what's going on around me, if it doesn't serve me, it goes above the line. And if it does serve me, it goes below the line. Super simple. And once we start to think about that, then we become pretty clear that if there's this line, and thinking that doesn't serve me goes above the line, and thinking that does serve me goes below the line, the next thing that we want to do, and really in line with the third question, is if I've got thinking above the line that's not serving me, really what I want to do is I want to get my thinking below the line, get my story about what I'm thinking, about what I'm seeing, to be something that is below the line. And so what's important about that is that if we think about our thinking in this way, that, you know, I'm either above the line or below the line, I'm either not serving myself or I am, what I've done is I've created some awareness of a desire to really be below the line. So if I know that my thinking isn't serving me and it's icky, or even if it's positive, but it's not serving me, and we'll talk about that down the line, because that's a little bit harder to do. Typically, we're going to ask these questions when I'm struggling with something. If there's an area of my life that I have a hard time, that's when I'm most likely to ask the question, and I'm most likely going to have the answer, no, it's not serving me. So I'm above the line. The next question is, the third question is there a more authentic story I can tell right here and right now? And so that then kind of belies the idea of, if I'm above the line with thinking that's not serving me, I want to move my thinking down below the line to thinking that serves me, to stories that serve me. So, as an example, it may be that I'm upset with my partner, with my wife, and how she's behaving. And what I'm doing is I'm narrating a story that's got me upset about her bad behavior. And so what I want to do is, I don't want to, this isn't whitewashing where I say, oh, just think positively. This is, how do I create a story where I'm not the victim of somebody else's behavior, or I'm not the victim of my own thinking? And so with this, then what I want to do to get my story below the line is I want to put balance in it. I want to shift the perspective to something that recognizes that my wife is having behavior that I don't prefer, and to really find a way to get to a place where I am not helping and being fuel for that bad behavior. Because if my wife is having behavior that I perceive as being bad, I have a very natural tendency to hop up above the line and start telling her what's what, and that gets her a little more angry, and I'm, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, and here we go, we're climbing that ladder way above the line, and that's not serving anybody. So the question of what's the more authentic story I can tell is one that I want to be asking, hopefully below the line, or at least below where she is behavior-wise. I may be still, I'm so mad at what she's doing, and I still feel like a bit of a victim, but I know that this way of thinking and these three questions guides me to want to be below the line. So how do I tell a more authentic, a better perspective story? She's having behavior I don't like. I'm choosing not to join her. That's a huge piece of a more authentic story. Hey, I don't want to join her. And then the next part of the story is, and I'd really like for her to behavior to change in a way that serves her. And if her behavior's probably not serving her in the way that she's behaving, or I just may be completely misinterpreting it, and that is another thing that I want to do to balance out that story. But what I'm doing actively is I'm taking and creating space between the stimulus of my wife's behavior and finding a way not to just default do this climbing of with resisting it and being a victim and telling you what it's going to be, and instead be below that line. And maybe it's my wife's really upset with something that I've done, and so what I need to do is to just zip it and let her vent. It may be that the way she puts the toothpaste away is really annoying, and I have to make a decision about how important that is. But when I think about it from below the line, I can say, hey, do you mind putting the cap on the toothpaste? By the way, she doesn't suffer from that. She puts the cap on all the time. But I have the ability below the line to start to look at the situation from the perspective of solving it, not necessarily for my wife, but for me and the story that I'm telling. So above the line, there are some common characteristics of the stories that I tell. For example, above the line, it is typically fear-based. I fear that your behavior is going to make me, a friend of mine were talking about earlier today, your behavior is triggering me. Well, if I say that your behavior is triggering me, I am saying, here, you're in charge of how I feel. If you behave that way, I'm going to feel bad, and it's all your fault. So there's fear there. There's a very much problem orientation above the line. I can often feel like a victim because I feel out of control of the situation. And so when I move below the line, I'm not in fear. I'm more allowing and open to the situation. I'm much more solution-oriented. I don't feel like a victim. I feel like I have agency to solve this and to get to a point where I can at least tell a story that helps me to put things in perspective and not be driving myself crazy. I remember a boss of mine hiring somebody. I was a sales manager, and he hired somebody that I really didn't think was a good fit, and he did it without talking to me. And I was mad for a week. Well, he was fine. He didn't know anything was wrong, but I was so angry with him for a week. So he's doing something that probably from his standpoint was below the line. Hey, I got you a new sales guy. And my reaction was above the line, very negatively. Well, why wasn't I'm supposed to be the sales manager? Why are you hiring somebody without my, at least checking in with me, which I think is a valid question. But when I'm asking that question from above the line, I'm focused solely on the problem. And what I do is I tell a story about what a jerk he is for doing what he did. He's below the line, everything's great. And I, for a week, am driving myself nutty. And so the alternative to that, with the 3 questions and this idea of this line, is to say, gee, what can I do to bring myself below that line? And so it's looking at the situation with balance. He's the owner. He thought he was doing a good thing. Maybe next time, maybe what I could do is talk to him about why he decided to do that without checking in with me, because I was surprised that he did it, and find a way where my behavior allows me to ask those questions in a way that that person can hear, as opposed to if I'm asking them from above the line, well, what in the world were you thinking of doing this? Which, of course, then we just escalate the situation. So above the line thinking, above the line stories puts us in a state of fear. We start with fear. We're afraid of loss of control. We're afraid of not having the ability to solve a problem. We're very much problem oriented. And below the line, we move to a place where we're open and allowing to what's going on. We feel like we have a solution orientation. We're willing to put things in perspective. One of the things that's really important to keep in mind is that we're not saying a person did something that we don't like, and now below the line we're saying, oh, it's all okay. What we're saying is we recognize that story that we're telling about what this person did or what I'm thinking, and coming below the line and saying, yes, I didn't like that. So we're not whitewashing the behavior in any way. And so one of the things that's really important to keep in mind is that we're not saying a person did something that we don't like, and now below the line we're saying, oh, it's all okay. What we're saying is we recognize that story that we're telling about what this person did or what I'm thinking, and coming below the line and saying, yes, I didn't like that. So we're not whitewashing the behavior in any way. We're recognizing it and then seeing from below the line how to solve the problem in a way that serves me and that serves my wife, my boss, my kids, whatever the case may be. So to wrap up, the goal of this idea of the line is to help us to recognize and to be aware enough that if I come below the line, life is going to be a whole lot easier. I'm not going to be driving myself crazy above the line, telling stories about my behavior, my wife's behavior, my employer's behavior, my kids' behavior, and instead, below the line, I can say, gee, I wonder if what I can do is help to figure out why my wife's doing what she's doing, why my boss hired this guy without talking to me, and make sure that I'm doing something, creating a story that lets me move forward without feeling like a victim, in fear, stuck in the problem mode, and instead feeling like I'm allowing of what's going on. I'm willing to look at it straight in the eye, and then willing to figure out how in the world I can be a better influence on these people and myself by telling stories that are authentic, that are solution-oriented, that give me a sense of agency in my life, the ability to change things. And if you think about it, we spend an awful lot of times in the areas that we struggle telling the story of our victimhood and the fear of what's going to happen because of that. And so come join me below the line more of the time. We're not saying that you should never be above the line, but if you recognize that that line is there, you're more likely to start walking yourself back. So that is the line. The 3 questions: what's the story I'm telling? Is it serving me in this moment? There's that line. no and yes? And is there a more authentic story, if it's not, that I can use to get me to go below the line? That's it. I hope you will join me for the next one, where what we talk about is the space between stimulus and response. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. One last thing, would you do me a favor and give me a thumbs up on this video? And also, if you want to see more, hit subscribe. If you want to see them right away, click on the bell. And then please, please feel free to give me any feedback that you have. More than anything else, I want to hear what people think, to answer their criticisms. And that's a great way to do it, is by leaving a message. Finally, you can find me at ohthestorieswetell.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at ohthestorieswetell, and also at patreon.com/ohthestorieswetell if you want to support me financially and also have the ability to see what's going on behind the curtains, which may be fun, who knows. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you so much.